Hi, I'm Rebecca from Yarn and Chai, formerly Little Monkeys Crochet, and this is part 3 of the Malia shoulder bag crochet pattern. This pattern is originally part of a crochet along, and it's divided into 3 different parts, and I have each of those videos linked in the description below. In part 3, we'll be crocheting the top of the bag, seaming it, adding eyelets, and adding rope handles. This pattern can be found on my blog at yarnandchai.com, and the direct link is listed below, along with a lot of other really helpful information. Let's get started. Okay, I've just completed round 62, which was my final repeat. And as you can see, I've got a whole bag full of pretty texture going on here. And from bottom to top, my bag measures about 12.75 inches, which is what we're going for, somewhere between 12 and 13 inches at this point. So what we're doing now is we are going to attach our second contrasting color for the top of the bag. And I'm just using 24/7 Cotton by Lion Brand again in the color white. Just going to add a nice pretty modern contrast to the top of my bag. So there's lots of different ways to change colors, and you can do whatever it is that you are most comfortable with. My way probably isn't the most technical, but it's the way that I prefer to do it. All I do, I've already joined my final stitch here, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the white and wrap it around the hook and drag it through that loop, and then I'm going to take my finger and just pull that silver down, and I'm hanging on to it with my finger back there. And then I'm going to take the white, pull that down, and chain 1, because that's what our instructions tell us to do for round 63. And we are also going to turn our work. And we're going to single crochet in each stitch around. So here's my first stitch. Single crochet, and again, you can use a stitch marker if you'd like to. And then we're just going to put a single crochet in each stitch around. Now I have already cut off my silver yarn, but if you haven't cut off your first yarn yet, you can go ahead and do that, and we will weave that in a little bit later. So go ahead and single crochet in each stitch around. Okay, finishing round 63. There's my last stitch, and I am going to slip stitch to the first stitch of the round. Okay, and now for round 64, we are not going to chain. We're just going to go straight into the first stitch with a single crochet. No chaining up, just single crochet right into that first stitch. And what that's going to do is it's going to set us on the path of seamless round again, which is exactly what we want for most of the rest of this bag, a nice seamless look again, because we don't want to seam if we don't have to have one. And when we're just doing rounds of single crochet, it's really not necessary. So go ahead and mark that first stitch with a stitch marker. When you come back around, keep in mind this was the join. This is the loops of the first stitch, which we have marked. This is the loops that were created when we slip stitched them together and joined. And so when you come back around, this is going to be your final stitch. And I will explain that again once we get around to that. But okay, so for round 64, we're going to go ahead and single crochet in each stitch around. And when we get back to the beginning of this round, I'll show you how to keep going seamlessly. Okay, I just finished round 64. Well, I'm almost finished with it. I have one more to go, and I know that because this is the first stitch of the round. This is the loops that were created when I slip stitched the previous round, and this is the final stitch of the previous round. So I'm going to go ahead and put my single crochet right there. Here we go. Okay, now to continue in a seamless round, what we need to do is remove this, but remember where it was, because once again, this is the loops created by the slip stitch, so we are not going to work into those. We're going to work into the first single crochet of the round. Instead of joining with a slip stitch, which is what we would usually do here if we were going to work in joined rounds, we're just going to go right into the first single crochet of the next round. Mark that so that you know where the final one was, and then you're going to single crochet all the way around the top of the bag again. And we don't have to worry about skipping loops anymore because we know that this is the first stitch and this is going to be our final stitch because there are no slip stitches to skip over. Hopefully that made sense. So what we're going to do is we're just going to work seamlessly for the next, let's see, rounds 65, 66, 67, and 68. So for 4 more rounds, I want you guys to single crochet around the top of this bag. Don't join your rounds, just keep going and keep moving this stitch marker up. Every time you start a new round, mark the first stitch of that round with this stitch marker. And we will meet back up at round 69. I've just completed round 68. And we're going to move on to round 69, which is going to be the formation of our holes for our grommets later. So what I'm going to do is take this out, and round 69 begins with single crochet in each of the first 24 stitches. So that first one was the one that I just pulled the stitch marker out of, so that's 1. And I'm going to put my stitch marker back in so I don't lose track of where the beginning is. And then I'm going to go ahead and complete my 24 single crochets. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Okay, the next part of the instruction says to chain 2, so we're going to chain 1, 2, and then it says skip 3 stitches. So this would be the next stitch that I would work in. I'm going to skip 1, 2, 3, and I am going to work my next instructions in this one. So the next instructions say, again, we're going to single crochet in each of the next 24 stitches. 1, and as you can see, we've got a hole here, and that's where we're going to put our eyelets or grommets. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. We're going to do the same thing we did with the last hole. We're going to chain 2. We're going to skip 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, and we're going to start our next instructions in the next set of loops. The next instructions this time tell us to single crochet in each of the next 48 stitches. So go ahead and single crochet. There's our hole. And we are going to single crochet 48 times. That was 1, and we're going to do 48. Okay, that was my 48th stitch. And once again, we're going to chain 2 and skip 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3. Our next instructions are to single crochet in each of the next 24. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. 1, and we'll go to 24. Okay, and our final hole, chain 2, skip 3, and our final instructions are to single crochet in each of the next 24, which should work out perfectly. You should have 24 stitches left before you get to your stitch marker. Okay, that's the end of round 69. For round 70, we are going to single crochet in each stitch around, putting 3 single crochets in each chain 2 space that we created in the previous round. So all that means is we're going to single crochet across, and when we come to these holes, we're going to put 3 single crochets into the hole. Not into the chain, but right into that hole. So I'm going to get you through the first one just to be clear what we're talking about here. Put my stitch marker back in and single crochet in each stitch across. Okay, so I'm going to stop right here, and just in case you are more of a beginner, I just want to make sure that we get the exact correct number of stitches here. So it's very helpful to understand the anatomy of a stitch when we get to a point like this. When we create a single crochet, any stitch really, but a single crochet is what we're doing right now, this is the stitch that's created, and the set of loops that it creates with it kind of go off to the right a little bit. So you know that this right here, this set of loops, belongs to this single crochet, which is not part of the chain. These go together, so we know that we have a single crochet in here. And then our instructions tell us to do 3 single crochets into the circle, the hole. So that's 1, 2, 3. And the question most beginners will have is, okay, now do I put my next stitch here or here? Which is the first true stitch? Well, like we said, these loops are always connected to a stitch. This stitch right here, these loops are slightly off to the right, so we know that these loops don't belong in that chain. They belong to this stitch right here. So we are going to insert our hook and put a stitch right there, and that is going to keep our stitch count correct. And when you get finished with this round, you should have 156 stitches, just like we have throughout the entire bag. And so I'm going to go ahead and set you free for the rest of round 70. Just single crochet all the way around, and each time you get to one of those holes, you're just going to put 3 single crochets into it. And remember to continue on in that little guy right there on the left. Okay, I just finished round 70, and I took my stitch marker out a little prematurely. I don't want to confuse you guys, so I'm going to put that back in there. Okay, that was the end of round 70. For rounds 71 and 72, so the next 2 rounds, we're just going to continue single crocheting around seamlessly. So go ahead for 71 and 72, and we will meet back up at the end of round 72. Okay, that is the end of round 72. And for round 73, we're actually going to do the exact same thing, except at the very end, we're going to do something a little bit different. So I want you to go ahead for round 73 and single crochet along the top again. And then when we get to the end, we will join it in a way that we haven't been doing before. Okay, that is the end of single crocheting around for round 73, and the next part of that instruction says to join with a slip stitch to the first single crochet of the round. Now this is a pretty typical way to finish a round when you're joining your rounds. The only difference here between what you may be used to is that normally when you join, you have chained up at the beginning of the round, and so you've got like a little jagged edge right here, and you know exactly where to put your yarn. The reason we don't have that because we're working seamlessly, but the reason that we still want to join this with a slip stitch is because if we were to finish our bag here, then we'd have this edge jutting out, and that's just not pretty. So what we're going to do to fix that is we're going to take out our stitch marker, and we are going to do a slip stitch right into that first stitch of the round, and that is going to be the first thing we do to sort of smooth that down a little bit. And then for round 74, we're going to chain one. We're going to do one classically joined round of single crochets, and we're also going to turn our work here so that we can have a nice, very subtle but different edge on our work for the top. So we've turned, and now we are going to single crochet into that first stitch. So if you can remember, this is the chain one that we just did. These loops are the slip stitch, and so this is our first stitch that we're working into, and we're just going to go ahead and single crochet into there, and we're going to single crochet around. Now I just did 3, so I'm going to count back 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to put my stitch marker there so that I know when I finish that's where I'm going to join to. And it's not going to be a perfectly smooth edge, but it is going to be a lot better than it would be if we just finished it seamlessly. And once again, we don't have a seam, and that's a good thing. So sometimes with crochet you just have to kind of pick and choose what the better option is. They might not either be perfect, but you have to pick which looks better. And for me, if I can avoid a seam, I will always avoid a seam. So that's why we're doing it this way. So go ahead and single crochet around the entire top again. And when we come back to the beginning, we will join with a slip stitch to that first single crochet that we marked with our stitch marker. And that will be the completion of this part of the bag. And after this, all we have left to do is seam up the bottom, and I'm going to show you how to do that so that it creates a nice roomy bottom at the base of your bag. And then we are going to add our grommets and our rope handles, and we'll have a beautiful bag. Okay, I just finished going around round 74, and I'm going to join with a slip stitch to the top of the first single crochet of that round. Pull it through, and that is it for this part of the bag. So I'm going to just cut that off, pull it through, and then I want you to take a moment to weave in all of your ends. If you haven't done so already, I have not woven in any of my ends yet, so I still have lots to do. But I think this is looking great, guys. What do you think? So yeah, weave in your ends, and then when we meet back, I'm going to teach you how to put in the grommets or eyelets and how to fix up the bottom of this bag. The next thing we need to do for our bag is to set the grommets or eyelets, depending on what you chose. And regardless of which one you picked, this process works the same way. Now, if you are nervous about doing this and you've never done it before, I have worked up a swatch that I will go ahead and put the pattern on the screen for you for this, and you can pause it if you want to whip this up real quick. It's just a simple rectangle with a buttonhole in the middle, and you can use this like I did to practice on your first one. I think you'll find that it is not nearly as hard or intimidating as it seems like it's going to be if you've never done this before. But it's always good to practice just to kind of know what you're getting yourself into, because we have worked very hard crocheting up this bag and it would be sad to mess it up now. So if you want to go ahead and use this pattern, I'll leave that on the screen for a few seconds. Go ahead and pause the screen and then join me back. All right, so to set the eyelets into this bag, what we're doing, I have my bag inside out right now, and I have the buttonhole, well, not buttonhole, the eyelet hole that I want to work into. And what I'm going to do is take the underside here and tuck it back, because I do not want this base resting on the bag when I'm hammering it in. I made that mistake with a previous pattern and ended up with a little discoloration spot right here, which was really sad. So we want to make sure that we get that out of the way so that this layer is directly on our floor. And you want to make sure you're doing this on a very sturdy surface, not a table, more like a floor or the floor of your garage or something like that. Okay, so the first thing you need is your base. You're going to put it underneath where your hole is, and then you're going to take the grommet or the eyelet, which is the part that kind of looks like a top hat, and you're going to set it on top of that base. Once again, our bag is inside out. Make sure you're inside out here. And then you're going to take the hole and you're going to fit it over that little top hat. It's a tight fit, but that's good. We want it to be tight. Okay, and next we're going to take the washer. For the eyelet, it has these little prongs, and you want those facing down into the fabric so that they can grab into the fabric. And you just put that over like this. And then the last piece is this. Stick it into the hole. You're going to hold it with one hand, and then you're just going to give it some really solid hammers. And if you remove it, you will see that your eyelet is attached on both sides here. I'm going to do mine a little bit more just to make sure that it's really solid. Okay. All right, so as you can see, nice and sturdy there. So on the right side of the bag, it's got this nice smooth side, and then on the inside there's just this little raised part where the washer folds over, or the top hat part folds over onto the washer. So nice and sturdy there, and go ahead and do that on all 4 of your holes. The next step is seaming the bottom of the bag. So I'm going to show you guys how to line up your rope holes so that it's lined up the right way on the bottom of the bag when we start to seam it. So go ahead and turn your bag inside out again, and you want to line up your eyelets or grommets so that they are one on top of the other, but you want to make sure that there's about the same amount of space from here to here, here to here, and here to here. That's how you know that you have this folded the right way. If, on the other hand, you line it up so that these grommets are on top of each other, you've got a small space here, and a big old space here. This is wrong. So make sure that you are lining up the correct holes on top of each other. Okay, and then once again, our bag is inside out, and we are going to be working along the bottom. So make sure that this is real even. Flatten it out. And we're going to start down here in the bottom right corner. What you want to do is cut yourself a length of color A. That's about 5 times the length of the bottom of the bag. And then you're going to double strand, thread a yarn needle. And I should preface this by saying that I am not a seamstress by any stretch of the imagination. So if I do anything here that makes you cringe, just ignore me. I get by on the little bit that I do know how to do. So, okay, what we're gonna do is we're gonna start in the bottom right of the bag and just go ahead and right in the corner there, making sure you're going through both sides, both layers there. Pull it through almost all the way. Whoops, went a little too far there. Okay, almost all the way, and then stick your yarn needle through that loop to catch it so that it's stuck. Okay, now what we're gonna do is stitch by stitch, we are going to sew the bottom together. I'm not doing anything fancy here. I'm just going in from the bottom layer and out through the top. Oops. In through the bottom, out through the top. You don't have to do that. If you want to go back and forth, now go top to bottom and then bottom to top and then top to bottom, you can do that. As long as you are stitching it closed, that's all we really care about, and luckily this part of the bag is hidden on the bottom and we will never see it. So as long as it's secure, it is doing the job it needs to do. So just go through stitch by stitch until you reach the other corner. Okay, so I've just reached the other corner and then I'm going to weave in the end along the bottom here. And when I am working double-stranded with this yarn in particular, I've found it's hard to pull through more than a couple stitches, so I just do a couple at a time so that I don't get stuck like I am right now. There we go. Come back through. Okay. I guess I could edit out that struggle, but I want you guys to feel like you're not alone if you're struggling too. So I'll probably just leave it in there. Go ahead and cut. Okay. So what we have so far, this is still inside out. We've got our eyelets or grommets in. We've got our bag seamed at the bottom. And now what we're going to do is shape the bottom of the bag. This is a really neat technique that I learned when I was designing my classic beach bag, which I'll link down in the description here for YouTube. But what you're going to do, and this is still inside out here, take your corner, you're going to fold your bag or unfold it or whatever you call it so that you're looking at the bottom and the corner forms a triangle. Excess out of the way here and lay it down, making sure that it is flattened out down here for a good chunk of it. Lay it out so that the seam is going up the center of the triangle. And you're going to take a ruler and measure across the point where it's 5 inches wide. So for me, this is right about here. Leave that in place. Take a piece of tape that's a little bit longer than that. And this actually works better with like a colored washi tape, but I don't have any right now. So just make sure your ruler is nice and straight, that it's a nice straight triangle. And put your tape across the top of that ruler. I'm not taping the ruler to the bag, I'm just putting it along the top, and then I can move this out of the way, and I know that this line, the bottom edge of this tape, is the 5-inch mark. And now I'm going to take a little bit more of color A here. It's probably about a 2-foot length, which is more than I'm going to need. You just want it long enough that you can sew across this. Okay, and we're going to double strand it again. And being careful so that we don't mess up this tape. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start in the corner. My tape doesn't go quite to the edge, but I know that my edge would be about right here, and just the same way that we did at the bottom of the bag, we're going to go almost all the way through, catch it in the loop there, attach it. And what we're going to do now is we're just going to sew right across the bottom of this tape, and we are going through both layers of this bag. So you can't follow the stitch pattern because, as you can see, the stitch pattern does not follow straight. It goes off to the side. So just make sure that you are paying attention to that and that you're not just following it because it's the natural line to follow. And once again, it's kind of tough to work with this cotton yarn through a double layer with a double strand, but sometimes you just have to wrestle it through. And you're just going to sew right across this triangle. Okay, so I have sewn all the way across that triangle. I can take that tape off, and I'm going to make myself a knot here and then weave this end in. Turn it around so it's a little bit easier for me. Just pick a place and weave it in. I'm just going stitch by stitch here because this yarn is just giving me a horrible time with weaving in doubles. And if you are having a hard time as well, you can always just weave in one end at a time. That's not a big deal. All right, we're going to call that good enough. Cut it off, and then you're going to turn around and do the exact same thing on the other end of the bag. All right, so we've got our corners sewn. What we're going to do is flip our bag right side out. Zoom out a little bit here for you. And what we have on the inside, if I can show you, shake that out a little bit. Okay, let's see if I can show you the inside here. All right, this is the inside of the bag, and these corners, they come up, but they naturally lay down, so they're going to give you a nice sturdy inside, and they force the bag to be a little bit wider. And then on the bottom, it looks like this. Okay, so on the bottom of the bag, it looks like this. And I can't zoom out enough to show you the whole thing, but you're getting the gist of it. So it's going to give you just this nice roominess on the bottom. Nice and sturdy. Okay, awesome. For the rope handles, which is my favorite feature of this bag, you're going to need 2 lengths of rope about 36 inches each. And at the beginning of this tutorial, I went through what you're looking for with this rope, but go ahead and take your first one and you're going to stick it through your first eyelet. You pull a little ways through. This is the easier one to do, and you're just going to tie a knot down at the bottom of it. And what you can do is you can use your eyelet to pull that really tight. I'm just pulling from the back there, and it's making that knot nice and tight. Okay, and then you're going to cut off this little bit of excess. And I'm going to butcher this here because I can't find my good scissors right now. So there we go. Okay. Now, if you are using the same kind of rope that I am, I found this at Joann Fabrics, I'm going to show you. Mine has this pretty casing on it. It's what makes it look so shiny on the outside. And if you look at the end, you can see, if you just pull a little bit, you can see where it starts to unravel. And I like a kind of weathered look at the end of my rope. So I'm going to unravel that until I get to the knot. I'm just going to snip it off. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Unravel that casing. Now yours might not have this. If you're just using a natural rope, this step might not be necessary. And then I'm just going to take my fingers and smoosh it up a little bit. And that is one side of our rope handle. For the second side, we're going to do the exact same thing. And you can kind of eyeball how tall you want your strap to be. The 30-inch length for me is good. So I'm going to try to put this knot right at the end here without having to cut off a whole bunch. Go ahead and tie that knot nice and tight. And cut off the same length that you did on the previous one. Take off your casing. And smoosh. Okay, now the first two are the easy ones. When you put your rope on the back side, that first one is going to be really easy too, and it's just this last one that you have to be real careful that when you tie that final knot, it makes the rope the same length as this first handle. So just be mindful of that when you put your final knot in, that you're creating both handles the same size. My very last step, and this is of course optional, but I think it just really finishes off the bag, is to add this cute little tag. This is a metal ornamental tag that I found at Hobby Lobby, and it actually came in a set of I think 10 or 12. And it was in the scrapbooking section, and this one, as you can see, says live in the moment, and that's my favorite one because I'm not very good at doing that. So it's nice to have a little reminder to carry around when I have this bag on me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use color B to attach this tag. Go ahead and thread it through. And let's see, we could do it in the dead center or a little bit lower. Let's do, I don't know, I think I kind of like it a little bit lower. So I'm going to go kind of in line with the bottom of the eyelets there. And make sure it's centered. And yeah, this is where I want it. Okay, so I'm just going to come up through the bottom here. And out through that loop to grab it. And then I'm just gonna maybe, well, we'll see how many times we want to make it look the way that we want to. I'm thinking 3 is gonna do the trick. So I went up towards the right side, right top corner there. I'm gonna go to the straight across here and then up one more time. Getting crowded in there. Let's try that again. There we go. Down towards that kind of bottom right area. I like that. Okay, so I'm going to make a knot and weave in my end, and then I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other side. And that is going to finish my bag.